Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. My name is Elizabeth. Welcome to our first webinar, Experiences of a Narcissistic Relationship. Before we start, please be aware that this webinar will be recorded. If you don't want to be on camera, please feel free to turn it off. This is a safe space. We are here to empower, help, and give hope to each other and not to judge, okay? We are here to create awareness on the subject that is becoming an epidemic, but is still not discussed enough. You are welcome to share your truth and ask questions at the end of the webinar. Please be aware, we are not here to bash men or put them down. Let's be mindful that not only men are narcissists, also this is a space of love and respect. As such, let's be kind with our words, okay? If you feel uncomfortable or upset, agitated with what is being said, please feel free to leave the webinar, okay? We will understand. Let's all sit, enjoy, and hopefully go away with some more knowledge, empowerment, and with hope. Our first guest and organizer is Aurea Reiss, author of Healing Letters. She'll be talking about the realization of being in a narcissistic relationship.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Elizabeth. This was really nice. Bear with me, I'm so nervous and I have lots of notes, so I'll be reading more than looking at the camera, but yeah, bear with me. So my revelation that I had a relationship with a narcissist came almost a year after we broke up. At the time, I was starting to write my book, and I was actually writing the chapter about that relationship. And I was stuck in that chapter because I was still forgiving, I was still empathic of his past, you know, trying to understand where he was coming from. And I didn't want to be mean with my words, so I would write something, delete, come back to it. And I actually left that chapter behind and started writing on other chapters because I thought that chapter I needed to put more thought into it. And then one day I was just on Facebook and I saw this talk show about the epidemic of narcissist relationships or something like that was the name. It was the Red Table Talk with Jada Pinkett Smith and Dr. Ramani. And for me, it was a haha moment. I was sitting there and it was like the things that she was saying, it really hit me hard. So she started by talking about defining narcissists, and she said that narcissists are people who have no empathy for other people. They just don't care. They really grandiose, deeply entitled, arrogant, and can't deal with frustration. When faced with frustration, they become rageful. You can never win an argument with a narcissist. Whatever you do is never good enough. And it just took me back to the relationship. And I started analyzing from the beginning, everything that I said. That I was just sitting there and my mouth was dropped open. And I was starting to analyze it from the beginning of the relationship, the love booming, treating me like a queen. I never had a man treating me like that. I was texting my friends and saying, listen, girls, I'm going to get married next year. I'm feeling like Michelle Obama. I found my, you know, Obama. This is it. I'm done for life. I found my man. The triangle between someone that you love, which is someone close to you. When with me was my son. Although I appreciated the way he loved and cared for my son, when we were the three of us together, it was just too much. And sometimes I wouldn't say anything because I appreciated. So I would sit on a corner reading my book or just watching a movie, and he will start poking on me. What's going on? Are you feeling jealous? I'm not giving you attention enough. Are you feeling jealous of your son? How stupid and petty you are. So we would start an argument in that level without me, and I'll feel confused. I didn't said anything, you know, I'm just here minding my own business. So what's the problem? The corrosive controlling, from the beginning, I start notice that when I was with him, I couldn't, when we were together, if I was on my phone, it was a problem. But this is what a person that was sitting the whole time playing his video games, but I couldn't say anything or be on my phone. It was a problem. We'll start arguing or just start saying, oh, are you checking on your boyfriends? Or so when I was with him, I'll just put my phone on the silence. If my son was with us, I would just switch off for the whole weekend. If my son wasn't with us, if I had to call the person staying with him, I'll put on speaker so he could hear the conversation. Invalidate my feelings. Sometimes I'll just start crying because I didn't really know what to say. I was just lost and confused, or I don't know. And I would say, I would start crying. I would say, oh, you're being cruel with your words. And you would say, the problem, the reason why you think I'm being cruel is because you can't handle the truth. People that lie like you are, they're like liars like you are, every time they face with the honest and truth, they just think that the other person is being cruel. And one time I actually said to him, you know, even though you send the truth to someone, there's ways of saying, sometimes not what you say is the way you say it. But again, you'll dismiss whatever I was saying. But the worst for me was the gaslighting. For those who don't know, gaslighting means saying things that make you question your memory and your perception of reality. I remember this episode where we talk in the afternoon over the phone and we arranged a date. So I said, oh, just get ready, come here, we'll go out. So I went to his office and I was feeling off, you know, I was with my mini dress and looking all sexy for my man. I got there, he opened the door and he said, what are you doing here? And I said, we have a date. And he said, no, we don't. I said, we do. We arranged a date. And he said, no, we didn't. I have plans with my friend playing games. He used to play with his friends online. And so I just stood there. I couldn't believe it. I just stood there looking at him. He went back to his chair, he sit down, continued to play with his friend. He was with the headphones and the microphone. He was laughing. Probably his friend was laughing with him. I felt so stupid and humiliated. And I just closed the door and I went back to my car. And I sat on my car for 1 hour, half an hour, just crying and saying to myself, I'm sure he said that. I'm sure he said that. I'm sure he said that. So I came all the way to my house saying that to myself in my mind. I'm sure he said that. So from that moment, I start feeling that I didn't want to talk to him on the phone. I wanted him to text me and email me. And the texts were always just so big because I needed to make sure I was covering all the corners. So if something happened, I could say, no, but you did say that. But even when those moments happened, he'll say to me, no, he would dismiss the conversation and change the subject. Or if he wasn't in a good mood, he would just like turn around to me and say, did you took the day to disturb me, or start shouting about something else, you know? Let me just, I'm a bit lost now. And so that was the moments that I start withdrawing a little bit from the relationship as well. I start disliking, I still love him, but I start disliking certain behaviors, and that start to stick with me. And so from the moment I saw that episode, I start going back on the relationship and having all these moments, and it's like putting the puzzles and, you know, finding the puzzles, and it helped me achieve understanding. It helped me understand the moment, that relationship, because the problem is after the relationship, I was still very confused. It helped me understand the relationship. It helped me forgive, but it took me time because I was feeling so hurt. I was feeling blindsided. I was feeling stupid. I was feeling like I never felt like that. I felt the most stupid person on earth. And that understanding after watching that talk show, it helped me forgive. It helped me take accountability why I decided to stay so long in the relationship and keep going, because I kept going. You know, if you read the book, you'll see there's times, even when I read the book, I was thinking, girl, you had so many chances to leave, but you kept coming back. Why? You know, I had to take accountability of that, and that helped me heal and move on. And the thing is, when you start understanding things and you find your own healing, that's when you are able to overcome all of the pain, all of the hurts that I was feeling. And I managed to fill my chapter, to finish my chapter and move on with my life. And that's why we're here today. And so thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Aurea. Thank you. Our next guest, we have Rezna Khatun, author of Why I Loved My Abuser, talking about her 25-year experience of being in a narcissistic relationship.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi. Thank you, Aurea, for organizing this event and asking me to come on, because it's such an important subject that we need to talk about, to raise awareness even on children, males, females who are narcissists. We might not meet them in relationships, but even working day-to-day schools, unfortunately, they exist everywhere. So I'm really honored and humbled to join you ladies. And I wrote this yesterday. My computer did break down, but I managed to still print it. And I'm just going to read what I went through. I know I've written a book and quite a few people have read the book, but this I've written from my heart, what I went through when I was in the relationship. And I've tried to put, because it's 25 years and it's so long, I tried to put everything together quite quickly. So it was very easy for me to get involved in a narcissistic abusive relationship, but one of the hardest decisions to make and to find the mental and emotional strength to leave. The narcissist is highly intelligent and extremely manipulative. He sucked me in like a vampire with emotional, mental, gaslighting, physical and controlling abuse. I was doubting my mental health and my beliefs and my character. I lived in fear every day. He abused me every way possible. I was humiliated and made to feel worthless with his cruel words. He always had to be in control. His biggest fear was losing control. He was never happy. I was never good enough for him. He would always accuse me of flirting, smiling with another man, which would make him so aggressive and violent towards me. The constant accusations he made, he would then try to make logic of them. And he would say he was right and I was always wrong. He would criticize my clothes, my makeup. And that was him taking control of my life. He was changing me. He would always find something to complain about, whether it's a cup of tea, something I've worn or something I've done. But that was him controlling me like a puppet. He would constantly explain to me how he's protecting me from my devious family and everyone hates me because they are jealous of me. And he's someone very special. I started believing and tolerating his abuse. I started losing feelings and lived every day in fear and in numbness. Being isolated from friends and family and society, every day the ordeal of living with him made me physically sick. And I was very, very scared with fear. I became very anxious. I developed panic attacks out of fear. My speech was slurred, my sentences were mixed up. He made me feel so worthless with his cruel words. I was ashamed, powerless. I was lost like a little girl from my childhood again. I would have sex with him in fear to keep him happy, so he doesn't abuse me with threats and aggressive shouting just to keep him happy. I hated it and I felt sick in his presence, but I had no courage or strength to leave him because I was sucked in the bubble. I found an understanding within myself to continue having a sexual relationship so I don't get punished further. I was already so lost mentally and emotionally. I was drained. I was physically ill in my body with constant fear and abuse. I also experienced spiritual abuse in the last 10 years in the relationship. He would try to justify his behavior, saying the spirits are making him do all these bad things and he is a good man. I need to understand him, and he's such a special guy. He was far superior than everybody. I realized he was very insecure and he had anxiety. I suggested to him to go to the doctors and he went absolutely crazy with mad anger. He was too superior to go to the doctors. He believed he was the doctor. He would say to me that if he dies, his death will be my fault and it will be on my conscience because I always make him angry and I always do the wrong thing. And his brain is exploding and it's because it's my fault. He constantly reminded me that he is the only one who cares about me and no other man will ever want me. And I have to listen to him from what I wear to how I speak, who I talk to. If he had a phobia against hairs, if he found a hair in his food, he would get so angry, exploding in rage, that he would make me eat that food. And I would eat it in fear so he doesn't get angry and he gets violent. Even if I wasn't hungry, I would eat that food. I was not allowed to wear red clothes or red lipstick. He said I was giving signals to men that I wanted sex. I was not allowed to smile. I was not allowed to speak. He would tell me what to say, how to say the sentences, including with friends and family. He accused me of flirting with my cousin brothers. In order to stop all this accusation, I just cut everybody off. So it was just me, him, and my 2 kids. I would stop relationship with my family. For many, many years, I had nobody. I felt isolated from everyone. And that was his plan. His plan was to isolate me from everybody. Living in fear for so many years, my shoulders went in, my body changed so much. I was walking with a hunchback. I couldn't stand straight. I was always wobbly on my legs. I was always shaking. I felt so humiliated in front of my kids. They were growing up asking me why their dad behaved so crazy. And this was one of my wake-up calls. It is so important to talk about this subject. I had no knowledge of narcissistic behavior. I came across the word on YouTube. I started researching. I started reading about it. I felt betrayed. I felt humiliated that I was loving a man and he was treating me the way I was being treated. The reason I did put up with this abuse for such a long time, because a lot of people ask me, is because I was abused as a child. For me, narcissistic abuse was normal. I felt it's part of my life. It's what everybody goes through. And this is why we need to break the cycle so our children don't pick up on this subject. I didn't want my daughter to get abused and I didn't want my son to be an abuser. And this is the reason I had to find the strength and the courage to educate myself, understand how to deal with a narcissist and to leave him. Once I realized what he was, it took me further 5 years to leave him, to find the strength and the courage. And I did have 3 amazing ladies who came into my life and they helped me. But it was I've had 2 children and leaving him was the most painful ever. And for 4 or 5 days when I left him, I was completely numb. I couldn't think for myself. I didn't know what to do because he used to tell me what to do all the time. I lost all my self-dignity. I lost my self-love. But I had to break the cycle because I didn't want my kids to be in that situation anymore. I always get asked the question why and how I stayed in this relationship for so long. But as children, we block things up to cope with what's happening to us. And this is the cycle I continued in my adult life. I blocked everything and I continued blocking and just coping with it. But once I had my wake-up call, I made the change and I realized nobody's going to come from the sky and save me. I have to save myself. So it's really, really important. We keep talking about this subject. We keep raising awareness because our children need to learn. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Rezna. Thank you very much. Our next guest is Pamela Haynes, author of Loving the Brothers. She'll be talking about the cycle of abuse and signposting people to get advice and support.
Hello there, and good evening to everybody. The first thing I wanted to do was to congratulate Aurea for putting on this event in the first place. It was very much necessary, so well done on that. The second thing I wanted to do was to congratulate you on your book, Healing Letters. I'm very, very proud of you. Looking forward to getting my signed copy of the book as well, so well done. Can't wait to hear more about when your book launch is going to be, so that I can, be present at your event. And and just well done for having the courage to share your story. To you and to Rezna, for every time I listen to you both speak, I learn something new as well. So it's like a two-way street. And to say good evening to everybody. Thank you for the introduction. My name is Pamela R Haynes, author of Loving the Brothers and author of Loving the Sisters, which is coming your way shortly. I just wanted to let you know a little bit about myself. I've worked in the criminal justice system for over 30 years. 26 and a half of those years was working in the probation service. And I was a senior probation officer. And during my time, I supervised men and women who were either perpetrators or survivors of domestic abuse. So in my experience, a lot of people who are perpetrators, at some point during their lives, they were also survivors or victims of domestic abuse. Research suggests that children are very often in the same room or in the adjacent room when domestic abuse is happening. So, when young people then learn this behavior, they have a choice. Either they choose to be far removed from those personalities whatsoever, or some of those traits, those narcissistic traits, are in them because that's how they've been taught and that's how they've been raised, and they end up being perpetrators of domestic abuse. So what I really want to take you through really is some of the aspects of domestic abuse, starting with physical abuse, using intimidation, using emotional abuse, using isolation, minimizing, blaming, and denying, using children, using male privilege, using economic abuse, and using coercion. But for the purposes of this evening, I just want to focus a little bit on using isolation, because with everybody in lockdown, this is now our third lockdown, women tend to be in isolation way before it was common to self-isolate and to be in quarantine and so on, because it's normally one of the very first tactics that people use when they start their narcissistic behavior. So using isolation looks like controlling what she does, controlling who she sees, who she talks to, what she even reads. And in my book, Loving the Brothers, I do talk about a scenario where the husband is upset with his wife for the kind of material that she's reading, because it's uplifting material, it's empowering stories, and he comes down on her because of that. So a narcissist will control where she goes, limit her outside involvement. So she's not allowed to, pick up hobbies or go on girls' nights out. And they use jealousy to justify their actions. It's only because I care for you, darling. It's only because I love you. It's not you. I'm worried about other men who you may come into contact with, and I know how men behave. So all of these tactics tend to isolate the woman. In some cases, they will move the woman away from her family. She's allowed very limited contact with them. There's a book by Melanie Brown called Brutally Honest. And in that book, she says that she wasn't even allowed to answer the telephone when she knew that her family were going to call her from the UK. So he physically isolated her. She wasn't allowed to visit her family, but she also was isolated within the home as well. So she couldn't pick up the phone, she couldn't use her mobile, and she couldn't have contact with her family. So isolation is quite a huge one, because as I said, at the moment, we're all in isolation, we're still in lockdown, and you can then acutely feel what that must be like for a woman who's in isolation also. The second aspect of domestic abuse that I wanted to talk about, because it's closely linked to isolation, is using economic abuse. So preventing her from keeping or getting a job, making her ask for money, giving her an allowance, taking her money, not letting her know about money or have access to family money. So the example I want to give you where I saw that in my practice was back in the day when you were allowed a family allowance book. This was a weekly sum of money that you would get from the government to spend on your children. But you could cash this book anywhere, any post office in England, Wales, or in Northern Ireland. And I remember supervising a man who took his family allowance book to Northern Ireland, and because he could cash it there. But what it meant that his family, his wife and his children, were at home with no access to money for 2 weeks. And how I became involved is that the wife committed an offence of shoplifting to feed her children. And that's how she became involved in the criminal justice system. And she was able to disclose that this was something that he did regularly. So if you imagine a spectrum, at one end, the narcissist, all family money is his money, and he spends it on himself. So he will look good, but maybe the children don't. He resents her for spending any money on herself, but he will be well turned out. He will put the family in debt, make her take out payday loans, and knowing that he's not going to ever be in a position to help her pay it back. He'll want to drive the latest car. But again, it will be her that's going to the whole expense of how that car is going to be purchased and how is it going to be financed. So that's just a couple examples there about how economic abuse works. Or conversely, she has all the money. He hands over his wage packet at the end of the week, and she has to rob Peter to pay Paul to make sure that everything is paid for. And he will come down heavily on her if she doesn't, if the family are in debt or things are not covered properly. He could absolve himself of responsibility and totally blame her for that. I've heard examples of when the man wants receipts for how money is spent. He will ration food out in the home, and very often the partner has to go without. But it's those kind of financial decisions. She has no idea of how her own money is being spent. I remember talking to Rezna a while ago about some communities where women aren't even allowed bank accounts. They're allowed to work, but the money goes into the man's bank account. And again, he will either give her allowance or nothing at all. So that's one example, a few examples there of economic abuse. And the last thing I wanted to talk about was using male privilege. So that's treating her like a servant, making big decisions, acting like the king of the castle, and being the one to define what men and women's roles are. So I supervised a man who blatantly told me she had the kids and it's her responsibility to bring them up. And he didn't clean, he didn't sweep, he didn't wash, he didn't cook, he didn't do anything. all the tasks were down to the woman to do. I also supervised a man who wouldn't allow his wife to drive. So he therefore wouldn't allow her to leave the home. Therefore, he was the one that was involved in ferrying her to her parents' home or ferrying her, driving her to work, being outside to pick her up. It's all of these controlling behavior that's coercive and designed to continually keep that woman down. So what happens next then? If you find that any of that information resonates with you, what do you do next? Well, everyone's situation is unique. So I strongly urge you to contact the National Domestic Abuse Helpline. I will put the number in the chat, but for those who've got a pen and paper handy, the number is 0808 2000 247. That's 0808 2000 247. And the staff at the National Domestic Abuse Helpline will run through with you what your kind of options are, which are unique for your own situation. And for those of you who are survivors, so you've already gone through it and you are at the end, but you still find years later that you're still dealing with the trauma of being in a domestic abuse situation, I'm going to ask you to reach out to me on Instagram, come into my DM, and we'll have a conversation. And I will further signpost you onto people who are experts in dealing with people who have survived domestic abuse. Somebody I have in mind has a 100% success rate in dealing with self-harm and suicidal thoughts as a result of coming through a toxic relationship, and she's available to help you. Domestic abuse is survivable. You can come through the other end. And I wish everybody all the best with their healing. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Pamela. Thank you very much. Our next guest and final guest is Gavyn Douglas, a local counsellor, and he'll be talking about understanding the complexity, why do people stay, and changing the narrative.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. I think throughout the whole week, I spent the whole week discussing what I wanted to say, what I wanted to get across. And I think I'm going to kind of not tell you a bit about myself, but tell you about some of my experiences. So from my own experience, the majority of the adults that I work with are female. However, in a school setting, or most of the under 16s that I work with are actually male. Yeah, so today I'm going to briefly touch upon how I may work with individuals displaying characteristics of narcissism, but also I'm going to talk about in working with how I might work with people who potentially are subject to the experiences of the perpetrator. So in 10 minutes, I'm not going to change the world, and I accept that. However, what I will be aiming to do is get your mind thinking and probably leave you with more questions than answers. But again, there'll be loads of resources that will be shared after books coming out. So I think also main thing about it is also networking. I think that's a very good starting point to understand how things can change and understanding why these behaviors exist. So in my experience, I first started off working with what I'm going to call the survivors, mainly women. However, there were a few men. So whilst working with survivors, there's normally what I call the dollar model, and it works upon 8 stages and what's called a pattern of abuse. So the first thing is isolation, which just kind of spoke about. Isolation, how does the abuser seek to keep their partner isolated? And the first thing would be usually is removal or limitation of their access to support. dictated routines, limited access to the outside world, limited access to your friends. Stage 2 of the 8-stage model is a distorted perspective. How do abusers push the blame or the responsibility onto the survivor? They might say things like, it's your fault, you make me like this, I love you way too much, I'm protecting you, or it's your fault, you wind me up. Stage 3, exhaustion. How are survivors kept exhausted physically and emotionally by their partners? This may present in dictated routines, signs of depression, giving the survivor loads of tasks to do, having the survivor live in constant fear, having the survivor trying to stay ahead or predict the abuser's potential demands. So they always want to be one step ahead. Not getting enough sleep, constantly on the edge, also mental exhaustion. Stage 4, degradation. How can someone be degraded by their partner? Told where to sleep, humiliating in private, in front of friends and family, put down statuses, or their status is none whatsoever. And I can say from my own experience, I've had that experience of an individual whose partner was made, or their partner made them use their own toothbrush to clean the toilet. So that's the kind of power we're talking about, and the degradation. 5, enforcing trigger demands. What trigger demands enforced routine may the victim adhere to? Again, cleaning, set dinner times, routines, phones monitored, social media monitored, because again, it's about total control. 6, threats. How threats might make up. Threats of violence, and sometimes it's not about the actual act of violence, it's the fear of violence. And again, in my experience, I had one individual who had a history of abuse, and her partner had broken her thumb. He pulled her thumb right back until her thumb was touching her arm. However, she said, Gavyn, I'm not fearful of him hurting me. I am more fearful of when he's angry and he's in silence. I can't deal with the silence. The silence is the one thing that I really can't deal with. Also, perpetrators may also threaten to harm themselves. So rather than harming the victim, they're harming themselves. So it's about, again, how we can control. I will leave you. I will find you if you leave me. I'll take the children. Wherever you go, I will kill you and your family. Blackmail, threats to leave. Also, the big thing is no one will believe you, because sometimes victims don't have a network of support. They're quite isolated. 7, display of total power. In what way may an abuser demonstrate their total power over a partner? Decision making removed. I think we just spoke about money being handed in as soon as you get paid. Making decisions without their consent, and all the above. Now, the 8th stage is what I'm going to probably call the most tactile stage. It's called occasional indulgences. So the 8th stage is where the abuser tends to buy flowers, chocolates, rewards, because that's the element of, in that scenario, it's an act of, some people call it the calm before the storm. It's the subtleties and the element of the control that someone has. It has someone, again, overthinking what's going to happen now. Does he love me? Does he not love me? So when I'm working with people who experience domestic abuse. I also might use what's called a power and control wheel. I think Pam touched upon quite a few elements of the power and control wheel. So we're looking at it's ideally, I can explore what the victim or what the perpetrator should or shouldn't be doing, but that's not conducive, because sometimes it's about raising awareness and helping individuals make decisions for themselves, making them understand what they need to do, where they might develop or where they need to make changes in their own lives. So we also look at, for example, many people I work with don't actually understand that they are subject to abusive behaviors because they think it's normal. They think it's normal. I've always had this kind of partner, or maybe their parents were like that. So they don't have an understanding of what a equal or a healthy relationship looks like. Again, I'm going to touch upon why people stay. And the biggest thing in my experience, and will be also look at a bit of research, is we're looking at people, especially, I'm going to use the term women, especially of ethnic minorities, don't trust services. They don't attend services available. Reasons behind that are they don't understand our culture. It might be elements of finance. It might be due to stigma. If you use mental health, people don't attend mental health services under fear. It would labeled this individual or that kind of individual. And it's the same with people who go through domestic abuse. They have a stigma attached to them for attending or seeking support. I'm also going to throw in, from a community perspective, is how many people potentially in the community would see their friend as a perpetrator and tell them that they're wrong. Sometimes we turn a blind eye, none of our business. Culturally, we've got an element of is not my business, don't say nothing. I work in a school, and there are times where we might see, or I might see, I'm going to own it, I might see children in scenarios where they're probably going through bad situations, but when you bring it up to maybe one of the parents, and these are not, or and it's not the stereotypical one-parent family, there are two parents in the families or the child's life, and there's still a stigma of don't tell this or don't tell that, because the challenges of how it's going to be perceived or what social service intervention means to individuals, because again, there's potentially in our community or society, there's also a negative stigma attached to social services. They're going to take on my child opposed to support me and help me understand how to improve. The final thing I want to kind of mention about is changing narrative. How do we change the narrative? What can we change as individuals? And that would be things for me like supporting individuals to get help. That would also involve things like ensuring that we or our friends don't become isolated. You know, sometimes we have that friend, male or female, when they get a partner, they start to not come out as much, or, you know, I'm stopping, I'm going to have a quiet night tonight. It's when you start to see changes, how do you support each other or your friends to still be the same friend with or without a partner, and not limit access to your friendship due to love or marriage or how it may be. I think there's also a thing where I'm kind of going to end on a question, a poster statement. I'm going to end it with a question. And the question is the issue we're talking about today, is it a disease of the individual? Is it a disease of society? Or is it something else? I'm going to leave it there.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Gavyn. Thank you very much. We are opening the room now. Does anyone have any questions, or would you like to reply to Gavyn's question or share your truth with us?
Actually, I would like to.
Yes.
Sorry, Elizabeth. Thank you. Back to Gavyn. Can you repeat, because I want to take notes. Can you repeat the question, please?
Okay, the question is, is in a sense, narcissism a disease of an individual, a disease of society, or something else?
Or something else. That's brilliant, Gavyn. Thank you very much. I knew you would leave us thinking, like, but it's good. Thank you so much, all the speakers. I'll back to you, Elizabeth.
Thank you very much. We've got a question from Colin. Hi, Colin.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. It was really quite enlightening by all of you speakers. And I've got a few questions, but I just want to throw one back at Gavyn as he was asking a question. You know, is it a disease of the individual or disease of society or something else? I'm thinking it's possibly something else. I was thinking nurture versus nature. Oftentimes people are brought up in an environment where they are, as children, where they are perhaps bullied or put down or made to feel a particular way, and that child probably grows up to become who they are unconsciously. That's why they have no insight as to whether they're doing something wrong or not. To them, it's normal, you know? So that's my kind of feedback on the question that Gavyn posed. I might be wrong, it's just my opinion, just trying to get to understand what a narcissist is. But what I really wanted to ask, and this is open to all of you speakers and anyone generally that's listening really, I was thinking, you know, are narcissists only narcissists when they're in a relationship? When, and you know, when do they feel empowered to be that way? And I'm trying to read some notes from memory, but I've only just written them down. Let me see what I've got. Yeah, basically, is that becoming a narcissist? Is that when they feel empowered to be a narcissist? You know, being able to control a person. Because if that's the only place you're powerful in a relationship, then there's definitely an issue, a very strong issue that needs to be dealt with. But another point I wanted to make is, oh yeah, I was just thinking, actually, I'm trying to read here, but please, I apologize. Just a few points I've made. I'll come back with something else in a minute. I'm trying to read and think. All right, but is a narcissist basically only a narcissist when they're in a relationship? And do we recognize, and what, yeah, that's it. What the telltale signs of someone who's been a narcissist before they become a narcissist? You know, is there a prelude to their little behavior? Are there little hints and tips that we can say, oh yeah, that person's a narcissist, or they're gonna be one? Or if you're in a relationship with somebody, I think I might be that person that got narcissistic tendencies just by knowing them generally. So maybe the authors could respond to that.
I don't mind to go first. With me, what I felt it was just with me, because with other people, it was always so pleasant, so nice, so polite. And I said that in my book, it was like, I actually came to a point where I thought it was bipolar as well, because it was like I was dealing with two people. You know, when he was among people, it was just this person that I'll sit there and be like, oh, it's so nice. And then soon the people will leave the room, like his face, even his face expression, everything will change and it will just become nasty. So I don't know from the clinical point of view, Gav, what you think, but or what you have to say, but I don't have much knowledge. I just know that I see, now that I have some knowledge, I can identify even at work, I can identify some people when they start their behavior, I'm like, okay, I don't need to deal with you because you're a narcissist. But from my experience, I felt it was just with me, but then it's that thing that they very good and putting covers to look good for other people, but then inside of the house you're living a living hell. So I don't know if anyone else.
We've got a question in the chat. I will throw it to one of the guests. So question is, what is codependency? Who would like to answer that? Gavyn, Pamela, Rezna, Aurea? Rezna?
So for me, codependency is when, say for myself, is when I'm relying on that person for emotional, mental support. When I want to look after the person, I'm quite needy and I'm replacing my neediness with that person's emotions. I'm very empathetic, but the narcissist is not empathetic. So I will always see the best in that person. I want the best for that person. I will go out my way. No matter what they do, I'm always there for that person. I'm trying to be positive. I'm mollycoating everything. I'm hiding everything. And for me, I believe I had a neediness from him. I wanted to be validated. I wanted to be accepted. I wanted to be told that I'm worthy. So I was depending on him for my independence. But as a matter of fact, I didn't need nothing from him. It was just because of the way I was brought up, because I was abused as a child through my parents, mentally, emotionally, physically. I was neglected as a child. So my neediness was so hungry that when he came, because he was very manipulative, for me, it's my neediness that was my codependency on him. But I think Gavyn might have a different answer.
Go on, Gavyn.
Gavyn feels under pressure. Okay. Okay, is how I'll define codependency. When a child is born, child requires usually the mother to do everything for him, cater for all its basic needs. Right, there's the element of codependency. You can't function without that other person engaging. Now, in a relationship terms, is if you can't function, if you, I don't know, you might go out tonight and you can't have a good night because your mind is elsewhere, you are codependent on your partner or that significant other. And I think that's where it's nice, because there's an element of the power that you're giving that individual.
Yeah.
You're giving that individual the power. If you get someone who can manage that well and has your best interest properly at heart, you'll be okay, because that person would help you understand. You'll be okay, and they'll nurture you to kind of go through it. However, if you have someone who shows the negative aspects of a relationship, they're going to use it to their advantage. They're generally going to put themselves in situations where they are in control, where they are in need. They're not there by chance. They're there because they've put themselves there intentionally. And I think that's where you've got to be mindful, or people could be mindful of how they engage with, not even with narcissists, with relationships full stop, because you've got to be aware of yourself in the beginning. It's what you'll find, especially in my experience, most women who I've encountered, when they talk about their current partner isn't their first experience of domestic abuse. So there's something about the individual repeating patterns of behavior, repeating patterns of engagement. So there's the element of self-reflection and trying to understand, what is it that I need that I'm going out there and finding.
Yeah.
Gavyn, I have another question. It was actually sent to me during the week.
Yeah.
So it says, do we pick up behavior traits from a person who mistreats us, especially when you have lost yourself in the relationship? how do we identify our true self again?
Say that again, please.
So it says, do we pick up behavior traits from a person who mistreats us? Especially when you have lost yourself in the relationship, how do we identify our true self again?
Okay. So again, if I'm looking at it from with my counseling hat on, it's let's take away the relationship. Because if you enter into a relationship and you already have characteristics of codependency, there's a chance if you meet someone who's going to, again, abuse that situation, you've got no hope. So there's got to be an element of understanding, why did you lose yourself at that point in time? What was it about? It could be a case of, the good case for, did you lose yourself, or was it taken from you potentially? Right, but overall, it's the element of self-esteem and looking at you as an individual. You've got to be, what's the word I'm looking for? You have to be strong within yourself as an individual before you're taking on a relationship.
That's good, thank you. I actually agree with that, yeah.
Just conscious about time. There's still quite a few questions. So if we still have a couple of minutes more, I'd like to, Leticia, would you like to unmute yourself and ask your question, please?
I didn't have a question. Well, it was, I think, Colin, was it you said before about a relationship? Is narcissism in relationships? And I just quickly popped in the chat to say it's actually my father that is the narcissist, and he still believes he has a entitlement to a relationship with me, even though I've not had one with him since I was 5 and I'm now 32. But he continues with stalking behavior because to him, he believes because I am his child, that means he deserves a relationship, regardless if you want that relationship or not. That element is not important. So yeah, that was just to answer kind of Colin's question, really.
Okay, thank you. Just 2 more questions, please. I'm going to Janet Barrett. Please unmute yourself.
Okay, what part of the question has already been answered by Gavyn? I did put my hand up to answer it, and he's answered it correctly. But I believe that narcissists are literally empty vessels, empty people, and they make it their business to strip another person of their total persona, to gain that person's persona, to gain the control of that person. And it doesn't matter whether they're in a relationship or not in a relationship, you'll be able to spot the type of behavior from narcissists, because in business, in any walks of life, they will show these traits of showing that someone else is lesser at doing a job and they are better at it. They will, even if the person is really good, they will strip the personality of that person little by little by little and gain all the ideas from that person to empower them. It's all about empowerment and control. I've had 30 years of it, started from the age of 2 right the way up to age 32, of all forms of abuse, narcissism, gaslighting, control, all of that, starting from, like Colin was saying, it can start from inside the home. And because you've got no comparison, you fall into it, and then you fall into it, and you fall into it. And yes, it is all forms of it, as Pamela R Haynes has said as well. But when Gavyn was talking about the fact that there's all these 8 lines of recognizing where the isolation, distortion, the exhausting people, it's all about stripping the person down to nothing, emptying their vessel, stripping away their self-esteem in order to control all of them, energy vipers sucking everything from you to leave you completely lifeless, so that you feel that you've got to be completely dependent on them and no one else. And they're right, everyone that has said something, it starts by stripping you away from your family, stripping you away from your friends, stripping you away from your environment, almost making you agoraphobic, unable to go outside, unable to do anything, unable to care for yourself, because you've literally lost your mindset of how to do anything, totally out of control, totally, even not be able to look after your children sometimes. But some people that do have children, you have that element of that strand, and that can save you sometimes, because you forget about yourself, but if something is done to the child, you find the strength to edge your way out bit by bit, and you start to plot your way out of the relationship if something is affecting the child. But yourself, you don't actually care about yourself, but you put it towards the child, and that could be the strand that can get you out of it, but it takes time.
That's very true.
Thank you very much, Janet. Thank you very much. One last question. So Pauline, please unmute yourself.
Good evening, everyone. Aurea. Hi. I've listened to everyone on the panel, and I can resonate with an awful lot of it, from my marriage to meeting my now partner. It's like these narcissistic individuals, they do strip you, and it's your kryptonite, bit by bit, bit by bit, bit by bit. And I found the courage when my father died to get out of this relationship. But what I was really shocked about is that he tried to kill me, and the police could not do anything about it. So my question to the panel is that I think they've changed the laws now. Have, like, the probation service and social services, the schools, have you been working with the police an awful long time to try and change this rule that we're not going to get involved, or there's not enough information, or there's not enough proof, or there's no one there that can corroborate your story? When I went to counselling, and she told me actually what this individual had done to me, I was absolutely horrified. So that's my question to you, to the panel. The police, have they been working with you for quite a long time before they decided that they were going to switch it around and now get involved in these kind of domestic violent relationships and get the individual safely away?
Pamela, please.
Yeah. Yes, it's interesting, isn't it? Thank you for the question, Pauline. Not that long ago in British law, you could beat a woman with a stick no bigger than your thumb. When she got married to her husband, which her family had to pay a dowry to his family. So it's not just in Asian culture. In the United Kingdom, a woman's family had to pay the groom's family a dowry. And on marriage, all of her property, her titles, her cattle went to her husband. Yeah. So she had no rights in law. It's not that long ago in UK law, a woman couldn't even vote. And as I said, it was lawful for her to be beaten by her husband. Thankfully, we've come a very long way in terms of recognizing that even rape can happen in marriage as well. Again, not that long ago, it was okay. You could do that and not be prosecuted. And there are various agencies who go out and work with the police and do training with the police around domestic abuse issues. We're now at a point in time where the police will go ahead and continue to prosecute the perpetrator, even if the wife or the partner has written a withdrawal statement. So if they take photos on the day of your injuries and everything else, they can still lead to a successful prosecution because they understand that there is some kind of control, coercive behaviors that are going on, and the woman may be put under pressure to withdraw her statement. So a friend was telling me that on her road, one of her neighbors, a young woman, ran into her house with her baby because of domestic abuse that was going on. The police was called, and they were involved. And in between the police arriving, the perpetrator's mother came to the house to persuade her to come back, to go back to him. So, you know, us as women have a lot to do in terms of helping to protect other women who are going through those situations. And I strongly urge women to be sister friends to other women and men to challenge these behaviors. When we hear these locker room conversations, you know, about how some men treat their women, I'm hoping that men feel empowered, that they're able to challenge some of those misconceptions, you know, misogynistic kind of behavior that goes on when men feel comfortable enough to talk about those kind of negative behaviors with each other. So thank you very much for the work, for your question, Pauline. But yes, I can guarantee you the work with the police is ongoing. And will continue to be ongoing in terms of raising awareness, because every time you think you've got this subject matter down packed, another element of domestic abuse comes up that we're not aware of. So we're only now getting to understand ritual abuse, spiritual abuse, religious abuse, and how people use their religious texts to keep women in their place. But thanks for the question.
Thank you very much, everyone. We came to the end. Thank you very much. We are posting the email addresses, the speakers. If you don't mind posting your email addresses, your contact. So if anyone would like to contact you for support or some advice, please check the chat for the contacts. Yes, Aurea?
Yes, Elizabeth, I just wanted to also mention one of the things I mentioned in my book, that I went through therapy. And I just wanted to leave here that it is an important process. And Gav has mentioned as well that he works with a lot of people in those situations. So I just wanted to let people know that there's different type of therapies as well. The one I did was more similar with what Gav does, but there's other type of therapies, and there's actually a few holistic therapists here if they want to leave their contacts in the chat box, because what works for me doesn't work with other people. I know Letitia, Colin, thank you so much for coming. It's very nice to have men. You know, it's I know it's nice to have the sisterhood all here, but we would like to sit more often with men and have this conversation. So thank you so much for coming. Simple Divine as well. I think you also do holistic therapy. Yeah. So if you guys all want to put your contacts in the chat box, if anyone feels interested, and search and do. I advise therapy. I'm actually currently not doing, but I want to do it. But at this time, I think this time I'm going to holistic, do something different, you know, because it's something interesting to me. But like I normally say, there's no healing without forgiveness. And sometimes if you don't have the right support from your family and friends, please search therapy. It's not an embarrassment. It's not a weakness. It's also it's strength. It's showing your strength to want to be better for yourself, for those who want you, who love you and support you. So yeah, just wanted to finish with that. And please buy my book. It just came out yesterday. I hope you all like it. And if you have any questions or want to contact me privately, I understand that some people present here, I was having this conversation with Pam yesterday. Some people are not allowed sometimes and to participate in things. Sometimes they have to act in silence. Like Rezna said, it took her 5 years. You know, sometimes we just listening in silence and we can't talk because you are afraid who might see, who might say it. You know, we're here for help. That's why we're asking all people here that can help to leave information in the chats, and please be mindful that you're not alone. Whoever you know, you're not alone. There's always someone to listen. There's always someone to help you. And things get better. You know, it takes time, but we all get there, and with the right support. You know, and sometimes it's about, if you don't have anyone else, you need to start seeking for the strength in yourself, and that's where therapy sometimes helps. So I'll just shut up now before I stay here the whole night talking. But thank you so much, everyone, for coming. Thank you. I really appreciate the support.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Silly me, my day, thinking that you'd stay.
Thank you so much.
Gave you my heart and you ran away. Either I'm stupid, I'm foolish, or you're playing me. But it seems we were never really meant to be. So I thought I would try something new. I wanted to find out if I could live happy without you. And it turned out I wasn't living at all. But I would have never known if you had this played alone. I was living the dream, believing things that just ain't true. Oh, I can't believe I ever believed in you. You had me chasing fool's gold. I was chasing fool's gold.